bucket in the corner. This operation had to be top secret. Chloe waited until darkness fell and then led Mr. Stink and the Duchess silently down her street before slipping through the side gate to her garden. "It's just a shed," said Chloe. "I'm sorry there's no ensuite bathroom, but there is a bucket in the corner just behind the lawnmower. You can use that if you need to go in the night." "Well, this is unimaginably kind, young Miss Chloe. "Thank you," said Mr. Stink, smiling broadly. Even the Duchess seemed to bark. "Thank you," or at least, "cheers." "Now," continued Mr. Stink, "are you sure your mother and father won't mind me being here? I would hate to be an unwelcome guest." Chloe gulped, nervous about the lie that was about to come out of her mouth. No, they don't mind at all. They're just very busy people, and they apologise that they aren't able to be here right now to meet you in person." Chloe had carefully picked the right time to settle Mr. Stink in. She knew her mum was out campaigning for election, and Dad was picking up Annabelle from her sumo wrestling class. "Well, I would love to meet them both," said Mr. Stink, "and see what people turn out. Such a wonderfully and generous, thoughtful daughter. This will be much warmer than my bench." Chloe smiled shyly at the compliment. "Sorry, there are all but old cardboard boxes in here," she said. She started to move them out of the way to give him room to lie down. Mr. Stink gave her a hand, lifting some of the boxes on top of each other. When she got to the bottom box, Chloe paused. Poking out of the top was a charred electric guitar. She examined it for a moment, puzzled, then rummaged through the box and found a pile of old CDs. They were all the same, stacks and stacks and stacks of albums entitled "Hell for Leather" by the Serpents of Doom. "Have you ever heard of this band?" she asked. "I don't know the music from 1958, I'm afraid." Chloe studied the picture on the cover for a moment. Superimposed in front of the drawing of a giant snake stood four-legged hairy leather jacket types. Chloe's eyes fixed on the guitar player, who looked an awful lot like her dad, only with a mass of curly black hair. "I don't believe it," said Chloe. "That's my dad." She hadn't any idea her dad had ever had a perm, let alone that he'd been in a rock band. She didn't know which was more shocking, the idea of him not being bald or the idea of him playing electric guitar. "Really?" said Mr. Stink. "I think so," said Chloe. "It looks like him anyway." She was still studying the album cover with a curious combination of pride and embarrassment. "Well, we all have secrets," said Miss Chloe. "Now what should I do if I require a pot of tea or a round of sandwiches on some white bread, please, with HP sauce at the side? Is there a bell I can ring?" Chloe looked at him with a little surprise. She hadn't realised she was going to have to feed him as well as shelter him. "No, there's no bell," she said. You can see at the window up there. That's my bedroom." "Oh, yes. Well, if you need anything, why don't you flash the old bicycle light up to my window? Then I can come down and take your order." "Oh, perfection," exclaimed Mr. Stink. Being in the confined space of the shed with Mr. Stink was beginning to make it difficult for Chloe to breathe. The smell was especially bad today. It was stinky, even by Mr. Stinky's standards. "Would you like to have a bath before my family get back?" Chloe said hopefully. The Duchess looked up at her master with a look of desperate hope in her blinking eyes. It was the stink that made her blink. "Let me think." Chloe smiled at him expectantly. "Actually, I'll have it for this month, thank you." "Oh," said Chloe, disappointed. "Is there anything I can get you right now?" "Is there an afternoon tea menu, perhaps?" asked Mr. Stink. "A choice of scones, cakes, maybe French pastries?" "No," said Chloe, "but I could bring you a cup of tea and some biscuits. We should have some cat food, and I could bring that for the Duchess." "I'm pretty sure the Duchess is a dog, not a cat," pronounced Mr. Stink. "I know, but we only have a cat, so we've only got cat food." "Well, maybe you could pop to Raj's shop tomorrow and buy Duchess some tins of dog food. Raj knows the brand she likes." Mr. Stink rummaged in his pockets. There's 10p. You can keep the change. Chloe looked at her hand. Mr. Stink had actually placed an old brass button in there. Thank you so much, young lady, he continued, but please don't forget to knock when you return in case I'm getting changed into my pyjamas. What have I done? Thought Chloe as she made her way across back on the lawn to the house. Her head was buzzing with more imaginary life stories of her new friend, but none of them seemed quite right. As he was an astronaut who had fallen to Earth and in shock lost his memory, or perhaps he's a convict who had escaped from prison after serving 30 years for a crime he didn't commit, or even a modern-day pirate who had been forced by his comrades to walk the plank into a shark-infested waters, but against all odds has swum to safety. One thing she knew for sure was that he really whiffed. Indeed, she could still smell him as she reached her back door. The plants and flowers in the garden seemed to have wilted with the smell. They were all now leaning away from the shed as if they were trying to avert their stems. At least he's calf, thought Chloe. At least he's safe, thought Chloe, and warm and dry, if only tonight. When she got up to her room and looked out of the window, the light was flashing already. All butter Highland shortbread biscuits. If you have them, please, called Mr. Stink. Oh, thank you so much. And there, I'm going to leave it till tomorrow and I'll read chapter 8.